the matter of transvestites. We know about them in our society today. And starting at verse 10 of Matthew's Gospel, chapter 9, it says, and the disciples, okay, so they weren't satisfied with that. So here they go further. They say, well, his disciples say unto him, if the case of the man be so with his wife, then it's not good to marry. That's what they're saying. Now, Jesus never said that. But he said unto them, now Jesus is talking in verse 11, all men cannot receive this saying, what I'm about to say to you now, save them to whom it is given. For there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb. Now, I'm going to read several scriptures if I get the opportunity to do so. I pray that I've made note of them. That there are birth defects in a corrupt, sin-filled, sin-stained world that we now find ourselves in, that Jesus found himself and even Moses found himself. There are birth defects. There are people that are born with cleft lips. We are running ads now on a man report of the mercy ships, and I pray that you'll support them. Or they're born with bow legs, or they're born with no arms or no hands. They're born with no elbows. They're born that way. Birth defects. It's not the will of God, but these are birth defects. What Jesus says about the eunuch who's born without testicles or a penis, it's a birth defect. It's not a decision. And there's some, Jesus said, I'll read it again. For some eunuchs which were born from their mother's womb. And there are some eunuchs, of course, which were made eunuchs of men. There's a very, very funny verse in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 1, where it says that, well, there are several verses in Leviticus chapter 21 and 23. Leviticus chapter 21, verse 17. Let's go there for just a second. For whosoever man be that have a blemish, he shall not approach a blind man or a lame, or he that have a flat nose, or any man with anything that's superfluous, and a man that is broken-footed or broken-handed, or a crookback, or a dwarf, or he that have a blemish, or he that has his eye be scurry, or scabbed, or have his stones broken. Now, I hope I don't have to explain to you what a man's stones are. If they be broken, then all right, he can't serve as a priest. All right, he can't offer the offering. But let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 23, I think, for just a second. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 1. He that is wounded in the stones, again, I don't have to explain to you what stones are, do I? If a man's been wounded in his stones, or have his private member cut off, he shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. So, and this is Moses writing. And Moses are making these laws in light of the fact that they're birth defects, or they're people that make bad decisions. And this is a funny one here. I shouldn't put this one in, and it might be a bit lewd, but I just think it's funny. And I'm going to put it in anyway. Deuteronomy chapter 25. And it says, when men strive together, that's fighting with one another, and the wife of the one draweth near to deliver her husband out of the hand of him that smiteth him, and putteth forth her hand and taketh him by the secrets, cut her head off. Now that I could argue that it belongs in the argument today, but really it doesn't. I couldn't resist it. And then I think about two men are fighting, right? So the wife comes over to help her husband out. Why would she, why would she grab him there? Moses says if she does that, whack it. Now I've lost my composure. I was moving along pretty good until I got there, but I'm given to do those kinds of things. But I think what's important is that birth defects is no permission to be a pervert. And we should never try to use that. There are some people who are saying that there have been some animals born, mainly in aquatic animals, that have been born without recognizable gender designation. It is simply a defect, is all that it is. And many are trying to point to some aquatic animal as the reason why men should be eunuchs, or to give some credence to LGBTQ. It's just ludicrous on its face to argue that. But I think the other reason is that Jesus says that some men are born with birth defects, but other men are made eunuchs by force. And there was a time that men who were of power and had a lot of servants around them and didn't trust their wives would bring the men that was going to serve their wine and their food and also take care of the wife in terms of responsibilities, that they had to be eunuchs, so that would prevent any activity going on between them while the boss was out gambling or doing whatever it is he does. Kind of like Joseph and Potiphar's wife. That kinds of circle. So Jesus said some men are forced to be eunuchs. They make that decision, or the decision is made for them. And I would think that they were slaves, and probably eunuch was forced upon them. Transvestite, or having their sexual organs removed, was forced upon them. And then Jesus goes on in that statement I just read, and some have done so for the kingdom of God's sake. That is to say, some have just taken a vow of celibacy, like the Apostle Paul, that they might better serve the Lord, that they don't interact with women. But this whole business of transvestites or eunuchs, or somehow or another that a eunuch, because they're in Jesus reference him, gives some sort of validity, credibility to trannies these days. It does not. It does not. There's no argument that Jesus gives that says that you should manipulate yourself, that you might do it for sexual pleasures. It's not there. It's not sanctioned by Jesus in any way. And anyone who tries to stretch the argument, that a person who was born, well, what about a person who's born such a way? Well, they're birth defects. Should you say that a person that was born without a right hand, they should not be considered human? It's a birth defect. And the best thing to do is, rather than disqualifying them or putting them in a special class, is to try to find a way to get a hand onto them. I've seen in some of the commercials, that we've ran, is that young girls, one particular girl who was born without a right hand, and she holds the glove on her left nub, throws the ball with her left hand, and a right nub. She throws the ball with her left hand, and when the ball comes back, she takes the glove off her nub and catches it with her left hand. Doesn't mean she can't function in society. This business of transvestites is off the chain in terms of its perversion and in terms of its anti-God understanding. And so the Apostle Paul says this, that he would rather be a eunuch, or he would rather not have sexual intercourses. Pope Gregory the 13th, I think it was, back shortly after the Middle Ages, then issued a decree that all priests should be quasi-eunuchs or celibate. And so they don't get married. But the other stuff they do, I don't want to talk about. But I think in terms of my argument of transvestite, it's an invalid argument. It's invalid. It doesn't hold.